Hello and welcome to the BloodStream podcast, a show serving the greater bleeding disorders community, brought to you by Believe Limited and BloodStream Media, and made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. I'm your patient advocate and host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I'm your healthcare advocate, nonprofit nerd, and your other host, Amy Board, reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
On today's show, Amy sits down with Joe Stanco, Hemophilia Treatment Center family nurse practitioner, for a candid conversation about today's hemophilia treatment landscape. Bipartisan legislation was introduced to Congress to target barriers faced by women and girls with bleeding disorders. We'll tell you all about that. And on I'm Fine, we're looking at what it really means to carry care for other people. We have got all of that and more on today's episode. Welcome to BloodStream.
Listeners, as always, thank you for joining us today. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the BloodStream podcast so you can get these things straight to your podcast player whenever you get on there.
Yeah. I also want to remind you, dear listeners, that the BloodStream podcast is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Takeda.
Takeda!
Yes, that's right, Takeda. Takeda's got this website, bleedingdisorders.com, where you can learn all about Takeda's resources for and commitment to the bleeding disorders community. Amy, Takeda believes in a world free of bleeds.
Yes.
And they are dedicated more than ever in their efforts to offer a wide range of programs and support to help patients throughout their treatment journey, wherever on that journey they may be. You can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time, because it's a complicated website, bleedingdisorders.com.
It's not complicated.
And for their founding and ongoing support of the BloodStream podcast, I would just like to say thanks, Takeda.
Thank you, Takeda.
So we got a bunch of topics here, Amy, but I'd like to start with this legislative piece because I like it when we have a nice advocacy update here on the podcast. What is this all about?
I know. Back on the 22nd, May 22nd, legislation federally was announced and introduced into Congress, that targets barriers for women and girls with bleeding disorders. The Fed Up Act has been introduced by Representatives Julie Johnston, who is a Democrat from Texas, Joe Wilson, who is a Republican from South Carolina, and Sarah McBride, who is a Democrat at large. So the three of them have introduced this legislation. It's going to be a key advocacy priority for the National Bleeding Disorders Foundation. So for those of you that will attend Washington Days next year, I bet this is something that you get to do a deep dive into and get to talk to your representatives about. Basically, let me read this. This is from the press release from NBDF. The Fostering Effective Diagnosis and Treatment for Underserved Populations with Bleeding Disorders Act reflects these sustained advocacy efforts. The legislation calls for a coordinated intra-agency review across federal health programs and agencies to evaluate and update programs, activities, and strategic plans related to women and girls with bleeding disorders. Key focus areas include scientific research, access to care, provider training and education, and the biggie, inclusion in clinical trials.
There we go.
The bill also requires the development of a national public education and awareness campaign aimed at improving recognition, diagnosis, and treatment among patients and healthcare providers.
Interesting. That is a compelling little piece there at the end. Fed Up. Well, the Fed Up Act seems like something worthy of our support and attention, so I'm glad we're talking about it here on BloodStream.
Yep.
Glad to know that it was introduced with bipartisan support. And to your point, sounds like something that the NBDF is going to be highlighting as part of their advocacy priorities for the near future.
Absolutely. And they did announce that this was going on NBDF's social pages. So if you follow NBDF, stay tuned there. But we'll also put their press release that was on their website. We'll put that on the show notes so you can, follow along and see what's going on.
Thanks, Amy. That's important stuff. That's some good real-world stuff happening right there. All right, from one important topic to another, we're switching gears now, moving into the I'm Fine segment where we're looking at what it really means to carry care for other people.
I think that's loaded. Carry care.
Carry care.
I feel like I do that.
Take a breath.
And I feel like it's a lot of weight.
There's a lot of weight in there.
Yes.
The late nights, the constant worry, the feeling that you always have to show up no matter what. Well, we explore the ripple effect of caregiving and advocacy and how that care can shape your body, your mind, and your life over a lifetime. And we ask a simple question that's not always easy to answer. What happens when you start giving yourself even a fraction of the care you give someone else?
Oof. I'm Fine aims to challenge entrenched ideas around chronic resiliency and satisfaction with suboptimal outcomes by inspiring people with hemophilia to seek education and truly consider the possibilities. Sanofi seeks to expand the idea of what's possible for the hemophilia community. Take a deeper look at the science behind hemophilia and an important connection between factor activity levels and potential activities at levelsmatter.com. Now, on to I'm Fine.
Sometimes it's hard to give yourself self-compassion. It's hard to give yourself the outs that you need because you feel guilty.
I'm fine. 2 words that are simple, automatic, and familiar. It's what we say when someone asks how we're doing in the hallway or on a phone call or at the end of a long day. And sometimes it's true. And sometimes it's easier than explaining everything that we're carrying. For caregivers, advocates, parents, siblings, and even patients, I'm fine can become more than a response. It can become a way of pushing through, a way of keeping everyone else moving, a way of making sure our own needs stay at the bottom of the list. Today we're talking with John Palmatier, Executive Director of the Alaska Hemophilia Association. John is a father, an advocate, and someone who has spent years supporting families while navigating the realities of caregiving for the bleeding disorders community himself. And like so many caregivers, John's learned that helping others often starts with something many of us struggle to do, asking for help ourselves.
Do I really need that help? You know what? I do. I need my alone time. I need time to just unwind. I need time to get my head straight. I need time to tag out and let somebody else take over for a moment.
Caregivers often become experts at recognizing when everyone else needs support. They notice the stress. They see the exhaustion. They step in when someone else is struggling. But those same warning signs can be surprisingly difficult to recognize in themselves.
When you're sacrificing, forget what it's doing to you and that you need to repair yourself.
The thing about sacrifice is that it rarely feels dramatic in the moment. It's usually one more appointment, one more responsibility, one more thing that needs your attention. And over time, caring for others can become so routine that caring for yourself starts to feel optional. But eventually, the weight begins to show up somewhere.
When there's so many needs, you often feel overwhelmed or inadequate to handle all the needs. And that inadequacy, makes you feel bad.
That feeling may sound familiar, not because caregivers aren't doing enough, but because the need can feel endless. There is always another challenge, another problem to solve, another person depending on you. And when you're focused on what still needs to be done, it can be difficult to recognize everything you've already accomplished.
So what I have to do is I have to focus on the good that I have and take joy in the victories that I have.
Sometimes sustainability isn't found in solving every problem. It's found in recognizing the impact you have already made, taking stock of the victories and celebrating progress, giving yourself permission to acknowledge that what you're doing matters. For John, that perspective comes from years of supporting families across one of the most unique communities in the country. Alaska presents challenges that many of us never have to think about. Communities separated by hundreds of miles, travel dependent on weather, families living in places that can literally be difficult to reach. And when you're supporting people across a state that large, caregiving takes on an entirely different scale.
The Alaskan bleeding disorder community, now we all say their community is unique. And you know what? Every community is unique. But we have people that live in remote villages. But I'm not always dressed like this. I'm here for a kids camp. We bring kids from all over. I have kids that come from a community with the bleeding disorder, and they come from a community of 20, 25 people. They got to take a mail plane that comes in 3 times a week that lands on floats on the lake. If a passenger needs to go back, they go back, but usually it's designed for mail. Then they go to another community that is often weathered in. In fact, those kids aren't here today because I got to go pick them up later because they got weathered in. The logistics of it. And then they get here and it's a whole new world.
Sometimes arriving at camp means stepping into an environment they have never experienced before. It's difficult to imagine just how different that experience can be. not only for families, but for the children themselves.
I've had kids at camp that come here and they've never seen trees. They come up and they touch a tree and they go, wow, and said, is it real? Can I touch it? Yeah, can I hug it? Then they walk away and the wind starts to blow and the tree starts to sway. They go, they can do that? They think the tree is moving its own volition. You don't know because they've never seen it.
It's an incredible reminder that every person arrives with a different story, different experiences, different challenges, and most certainly, different fears. And for caregivers, understanding those differences often becomes part of the responsibility. The challenges aren't only medical, they're geographic, logistical, and emotional. And every effort to support one person has the potential to impact an entire family, an entire community, and sometimes generations that follow. That's the ripple effect. Throughout our conversation, and really throughout many of the conversations we have had on this segment, one theme keeps resurfacing: the tendency to keep going, to push through, to minimize what we're carrying, especially when other people are counting on us. So we asked John what he hears when someone says the two simple words, "I'm fine."
When someone says, I'm fine, if I'm over there and someone says, how are you doing? I go, I'm fine. That is a cry for help. I'm at my breaking point and I have a coin broke. So I'm fine is a call for help. Someone says I'm fine, that means you have to take a little more time to, if you're saying it, take time for yourself. If someone else you love or someone you know is saying it, it's time to find out what you can do to help them.
Caregivers spend so much time making sure everyone else is okay. But care was never meant to move in only one direction. The people offering support need support too. The people showing compassion deserve compassion. And the people carrying the load shouldn't have to carry it alone.
You're doing a great job. You are doing enough. You're doing beyond what anybody could ever expect of you. Take a moment to realize that. Take the victories. Take the things you've done. You are doing a great job.
Maybe that's the reminder this conversation leaves us with. The same compassion we extend to others has to include ourselves. Because caring for yourself isn't stepping away from caregiving. It's what makes caregiving possible. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can say isn't "I'm fine." It's "I need help." Thanks for listening to another segment of I'm Fine.
Sanofi aims to raise the bar for patients living with hemophilia. Reimagine what's possible by visiting rareblood.disorders.com to hear more about Sanofi's dedication to the bleeding disorder community.
Thank you very much, Amy Board. And now moving into our last segment for the episode, it's an interview that you did with Joe Stanco, family nurse practitioner at the HTC at Northwell Health Experience. He is the founder and CEO of Hemostasis and Thrombosis Nursing Association. How about that for a title? Without spoiling the interview, Amy, what stood out to you from this conversation with Joe?
It was a total candid conversation. There was no like, oh, we need to do this. Somebody wants us to talk about this thing. I literally just nerded out and very specifically wanted to talk to a nurse because I feel like we haven't talked to a nurse. We especially haven't talked to a nurse practitioner about the treatment paradigm shift that's happening, what he is seeing in his patients, what he's seeing, from a national perspective. He's very, engaged and clued in on that conversation. It was a fantastic conversation. He's great. He's so well, knowledgeable and articulate, and also he's like a nurse, like a hemophilia nurse. And they're just different. They're built different, those people.
That's fair. All right. Anyway. Well, enjoy it. Here it is, Amy's conversation with Joe Stanco.
Listeners, I'm here with Joe Stanco. He is a family nurse practitioner at the HTC at Northwell Health Experience in New York. And he's also the founder and CEO of a brand new organization, the Hemostasis and Thrombosis Nursing Association. Joe, welcome to BloodStream. We're so excited to have you on.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be on here.
I guess before we even begin, tell us about the Hemostasis and Thrombosis Nursing Association, brand new organization. You're the CEO. What was the need? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so as I've been in this space for 10 years now, and I did come from pediatric hematology oncology, and so very used to nursing organizations in oncology, and never understood why we didn't have one in this space, especially that it is so different than hematology oncology. This is a subspecialty. And especially when I started in my career, it was factor. You get factor, and you get factor, and you run the factor level, and you get factor. And now with all this complexity, these different treatments that are amazing for patients, and to increase their quality of life, it added a lot of complexity for us. And patients deserve to have nurses who are certified. And so this started as a certification, because we do not have one. And so out of that, then grew the Hemostasis and Thrombosis Nursing Association, that will then oversee and handle the certification. So it's very exciting.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. I guess I didn't realize that there was no certification in particular for hemophilia for bleeding disorders. That's crazy.
Crazy, right? I know. I was talking with a urology nurse practitioner, and there's a certification for urology. And I was like, well, I didn't know that existed, and why can't this exist? So here we are.
That's crazy. That's great. Well, speaking of, you kind of mentioned it. One of the reasons I selfishly wanted to have you on is because over the last 2 to 3 years, during this massive paradigm treatment shift, and I mean, we've heard about it coming for so long, and it's been so interesting to be in the thick of it and be like, oh my gosh, it's here. We have talked to physician, of course, blah, 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 physician after physician. And I was like, good grief, let's get a nurse on. They're the ones with boots on the ground. And they're the ones that actually run the show. How has it been for you? What has the shift been in managing hemophilia patients in particuur?
Yeah, so I mean, that's great. So I guess I'm a good segue for that because I'm a nurse practitioner. So I sit in both models, right?
Both.
Yeah, I can, treat and I prescribe, and I also diagnose, but then I'm also, there through the education visits. I'm there during the follow-up treatments. I'm there at the adventures at camp. And so I can speak to this paradigm shift from both sides. And the way that I talk about this is like the medical model by design operates in blips, like on a radar. And so you have like your annual comprehensive visit, and then you'll have, nothing, and then you'll have like an ER visit, and then, a straight line, and then you have your annual comprehensive visit. Whereas, nursing is more like it's not a blip, they're waves. And so nursing goes through so many different like dimensions that a blip on the radar doesn't capture. Like, we get the first phone calls, right? We talk about the treatment struggles. We're there, to discuss any psychosocial issues, and then of course we hand it over then to our social worker. We're there for like the family dynamics, for the siblings, for everything. So it's so important to have a nursing perspective on this. And so how has it changed? It's changed so much. And I honestly, I never thought like I would, 10 years later talking about all these different types of treatments that we have, it's great how much things have changed. And so, early in my career, when I first started at the Hemophilia Treatment Center, it was really just about managing like day-to-day crises, bleeds, inhibitors. And that's, where we never knew like when you went in, especially on a Monday or a Friday afternoon, what was going to happen. And now it's shifted to more of like optimization, prevention, more than just like a crisis response. And so, which is great. So it's actually wonderful, right? That it has changed day to day. And so, and we see that also with certain prophylaxis now that you can have it, depending just on severe. It could be, we have a lot of, milds that are on prophylaxis, which is great because we're preserving their joints. They're living healthier lives. And so, and then of course, like the non-factor products, the rebalancing agents, I mean, these are all exciting stuff, gene therapy. So it's so different.
It's so different.
So different.
What's your take? What's your take? I guess let's start the list. What's your take on the recent long-acting factors? How are they working? Are patients interested? What is the best lifestyle for some of these, for both A and B, hemophilia A and B?
Yeah, so I think anytime you have options is always great. And so, in all, factor works, it just depends on which one is best for you. And that could really be dependent on like the half-life. And so when we discuss about a half-life, if we say, medication has a 12-hour half-life, that means that half of it's, is used in that time frame. And so, we talk about half lives, and then, one thing as a clinician that had made it, a little difficult is the lab testing. Is that depending on the product that you're on, the laboratory test may need to be calculated, or it may be incorrect. We see that, at our center, hemophilia center. So we have all the laboratory testing that we can need. But we have patients that go away to college, that go on vacation, and they may have an accident, and then they're in a hospital where it doesn't have that testing, and so then we have to, that creates something that sometimes some headaches for us. But for the patient, living day to day, it has been amazing, because the less infusions, the less sticks, the less medication you have to remember to take, the better your quality of life is going to be.
What about these non-factor replacement therapies, these rebalancing agents, as we're calling them? I'm fascinated with this science. I'm fascinated how it's working in the real world. Fascinated to hear how y'all are handling surgeries, how you're handling breakthrough bleeds. This is kind of a loaded question, but just to begin, what is your take on these rebalancing agents?
Yeah, so fortunately, I've had like the privilege and the luxury of being on a lot of these research trials. So we've had to easily, gradually get into them with like defined protocols and not as many patients. But again, it's for the right patient. These are amazing, right? To say to someone, you have to infuse once a week to find a vein. Now you can have a subcutaneous option. With the auto injector is something that's just so foreign to patients, even to us as a provider. And so, and what has changed though for as a clinician and as a nurse is that before we would always say like, just infuse factor first, and then we'll worry about everything else later. And now, right now, that may not always be the answer, depending on the situation and the product that the patient is on. Maybe sometimes they can't even, patient can't be on like an antifibrinolytic, depending on, the medication that they're taking, for prophylaxis to prevent bleeding. So that has, certainly changed. And again, it goes back to why nurses then should be certified, right? These are complex treatments. Like the landscape has changed. And so it's not just about factor only. And so it's really important to make sure that we have, nurses who are certified and educated on these products.
100%. Because you guys are boots on the ground. You guys
We are
you're
boots
the
on the
ones that get those
ground.
calls.
We get we get the
Yes.
calls. We get the calls.
How has it been? I'm going rogue on questions. How has it been with your colleagues with this new treatment shift? Do you all reach out when a patient calls in? Is it one of those things that do you guys feel organized? I know you sit on the NBDF nurses working group. So do you guys how are you guys doing?
Yeah, no, so no, I think that misery always loves company, right? Especially if you don't know what to do, right? And so
Yes.
it makes you like confirm, like, okay, like I understand, I understand why I'm freaking out about this. And so even for me, I work in a large health system, but we're the only bleeding disorder clinic, and so I can't ask anyone else within my institution. I have to go outside, and that's why it's so important to have this network. It's so important that I am on the MBDF nursing working group. We have with the Hemostasis and Thrombosis Nursing Association, HTNA. We want to create that nationally, like an actual solid foundation, because we do know that we have to rely on each other to get these answers. Because we're dealing with a rare disorders and medications that most people don't even know how to pronounce, let alone prescribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so different. Like like you mentioned, I mean, it was just ingrained into this community, treat first and then call, and then, we'll figure it out. And that would, oh my goodness, that's such a shift.
You said the most like impactful thing. It was ingrained, and a lot of that, we did that, as treaters and as providers, that, if you have like pain, if you feel something, infuse factor and then think about it. Whereas maybe now that may not be, but how do we change that teaching? How do we change that? How do we have that shift?
Again, I'm going rogue. So much of summer camp used to be that teaching, teaching
Yes.
to take ownership of your hemophilia, teaching self-infusion. I know you are involved with camp. It's the most magical place in our community. How has camp shifted? What are those 8-year-olds doing?
Yeah, so I remember when I first started going to camp, we would have just like tables of factor lined up, for prophylaxis right before. It was just like
Yeah,
like just tables and tables, and like people lining up, and now it's like we have all this room in the refrigerator now.
isn't that
Right?
crazy?
It's amazing. Like it's amazing. And now it's very exciting when someone is, have to infuse factor at camp, because maybe for their prophylaxis dose, and everyone gets to watch, and we're like, oh, we get to actually do this.
It's a novelty.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
do you all teach the importance of self-infusion? Is that still a thing, or is it becoming less and less important?
That's a great question. I mean, yes, but then how do you keep up on that skill? How do you keep up with that skill? Because we can teach it, and we can, of course, finding a vein. But if you're you may not have a bleed for a year or so, or maybe never. And so how does that then, work? Because it is a skill that you have to get. And so, for patients that switch to a non-factor product, they have, may have been infusing for so many years that it's like riding a bike. They can just go back to do it. Right. But how do you teach then that adolescent, how to do that? And then how do you teach, parents how to do that? If you have a little, baby, it's like, it's so hard. I can't imagine to have to stick your own, child. And of course you will. And many parents did, because they had no other choice. But if you have a choice, then it's kind of hard to kind of discuss about and teach. And so, yes, it's still the gold standard, but how do you practice that skill?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day when we were like on the precipice of this, there was a physician that told me that we're going to be a community of milds.
Yeah.
Does it feel like that? Is that a thing? Is that a thing? Did that come true?
Oh, it's a thing. It's a thing. And yeah, it's a thing. And the thing is, we always would say, like, we always say, oh, hemophilia, if we discuss about hemophilia, is always harder to treat than severe, because with the mild, and when we say mild, right, for it's, level from like 6 to like 40 something percent, depending on which mark that you use. But it's like, it's such a wide range. But it's like, yeah, you may not had a bleed before. So what do you do? Right. And so with a severe patient, that they've treated bleeds, they've seen maybe other family members, with that. But with a mild, you don't. And then, how do you recognize that? How do you recognize that? Because now we're kind of teaching in the abstract, like, this is what it feels like if you have a bleed, and so they don't know, which is great. But when you do need to know, then that's when that breakdown occurs.
Right. From a joint health perspective, are there studies starting or being percolated about, studying joints now in this new era of treatment? And how are joints going to be affected? Here we are, a community of milds.
Yeah, so that brings up a great question. It's actually a research question that I am working on and want to submit to our IRB, is because we don't know what is normal wear and tear on a joint for someone without like a bleeding disorder, like, like hemophilia. So when you have athletes that are, playing, a sport and that don't have a bleeding disorder, what do their joints look like? Because are we going to say then that that any change in the joint is due to a bleed, or is that just normal wear and tear? And that's something that we don't know, and something that, I have been speaking with, national colleagues, especially the physical therapists, about answering this question, right? Because and also what's puts our patients at a disadvantage is that we tend to shy away from those NSAIDs, those like ibuprofen and from Motrin, because they do have those antiplatelet properties, but they're also anti-inflammatory. And so then if you're not using that, does that put them at a disadvantage? So there's a lot of questions that we still have to answer here. And so, yeah, we just don't know. I do perform ultrasound in clinic. I do that. I think it's very, very important. We can see, in the patient's joints, and ultrasound, there's no radiation. It's quick to do once you get used to it. It took me a long time in the beginning. I've been using it for almost 10 years. In the beginning, it took me, about 45 minutes to scan a joint. And now I could do it within a few minutes. I could just do like those money shots and get what I
Don't
need.
brag, Joe. Don't brag.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
So
that's awesome. And again, I'm going rogue. All these questions keep popping up. I'm sure our listeners back home, it's like, yes, everybody, when they're in their appointment and they get a nurse in the room, I think they just like keep asking questions. You guys are just a treasure trove. We talk so little about inhibitors nowadays. How are your inhibitor in patients? Are they in critical state? Do you have a handful that are in critical state? How are our sweet hemophilia B inhibitor patients doing? Has it come down the pipeline where they have a treatment that will work for them? How's Hemlibra doing for these patients?
yeah. So regarding that's a lot, right? That's a lot, and these are questions that are amazing. And so when we talk about inhibitors, again, there's a lot that we don't know. There was when I was first being trained in this space, it was like first 50 infusions, like especially the first 20, that's the most critical, then up to 50, and now it's like, well, how long does it take to get to 50 infusions if you're on a non-factor product? And is that right? And is that still the same number now? Like, does it, right? Is it like 50 because you're getting that 50 within like 1 year or a year and a half? Or is it 50 that you may get that over 10 years? Is that still the same answer? That's just the questions that we don't know. We also have seen some, individuals with hemophilia that did not have an inhibitor, that went to a non-factor, then developed an inhibitor to factor. That's not many, but it's happened. And so, was that, regular infusion, was that keeping the inhibitor, at bay? Those are questions that we don't know. And so, but in terms of how are they doing on the non-factor products, I mean, most of them are doing amazingly, right? Amazingly.
Great.
And so that's the important part.
That's great. That's great. What's your take on gene therapy?
Yeah,
in totality.
Yeah. So I think the science behind it is fascinating, and I think that it definitely has a place in our many options that we have, but it's not a one and done yet. That's not it. And I think that letting patients understand that is important. But no, I think it's great. If a patient wants that as an option, then why not? Why not? It's really up to the patient, as long as they understand that the possibility of having to take steroids and the lab follow-ups, and as long as they're okay with that, it's amazing. I met a patient at one of the conferences. I love going to conferences and seeing patients and see, not even like, I love to see my patients too, but even just patients in general, and see, and I asked him, and he was a factor VIII patient and was on gene therapy, and he lost it after 3 years, had to go back on factor. And I said, well, do you regret it? And he was like, well, for 3 years, I didn't have to worry about it. And I don't have hemophilia, so I don't know what that feels like, but I can imagine for him, that was amazing. And so it's up to the patient, whatever the patient wants, right? I always tell the patients, I'm a risk benefit manager. What are your risks? What are the benefits? We'll decide together what we want to do, right? As long as you understand that. That's it. And I also work in a lifespan clinic, so it's very different from peds to adults, right?
Right.
Different conversations, different conversations.
No, that's actually, is that becoming more of a thing with HTCs, or are you guys specialized that it's lifespan, so it's not peds and adults?
Yeah, so I would say, I want to say about maybe half or a little bit more than half are lifespan. And then, I want to say that most, are lifespan. And I think that is also, important, to have that, continuation of that, right? And the continuation. And that, I think, and that's, the rewarding part, because you can, in one room you can have a 3-year-old, and in the next room you have like a 30-year-old, the next room is an 83-year-old. And it's just like, you never, so it's all great.
That's the community. How joyful.
Yeah.
That's so great. So you have been at the HTC in the hemophilia community for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Is that right? Like a little over 10 years. So you've seen the shift here when we talk about women with hemophilia and mild hemophilia. What is the mentality in the community with your colleagues about women with hemophilia? What are your conversations with women that come in?
Yeah, this is when I first started. It was, or when I was even, I think when I was in nursing school, I think we had one line about hemophilia. It was like joint bleeding and women don't get it. That was it. Like
Yes.
that was right. That was all I learned.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we know that's not true, right? We know that's not true, and we do. This is long overdue, right? For women, and the shift has really been meaningful. I think also too, a lot of our resources at the HTC, because of the different treatments, we're not just fighting with inhibitors and patients with bleeds that we can't control, and so now we have the resources to kind of look around, and then before that, right, they had the HIV crisis and hepatitis C, and what those HTCs and what everyone had to go through to manage. And so now that we're able to like take that step back, and it is long overdue, and that if regardless of your sex, if you have the mutation, your factor level's low, you have it. Like that's the answer, and you deserve to have the same treatments like everybody else to manage it. Like to say that someone has heavy menstrual bleeding and someone is anemic because of that, and that's just okay, just take iron. That's not okay, right? That's not okay, and it shouldn't be okay. And I think I think that this. When we talk about this, it's not like a zero-sum game. It's like we lift everybody, right? We don't want any group to be left behind. We want to bring everybody up. And so, part of my work, and I got a research grant from MBDF to implement primary care screenings at our HTC, because we saw that, and I know that we're talking about, women. We have a gynecologist that we have a heavy menstrual bleeding disorder clinic. And so through the gynecologist, women or anyone who can menstruate, they get their primary care services, possibly through their gynecologist. But for the like young men, we don't have that same pathway. And we saw that over 2/3 did not see their primary care for 2 years or more. And I'm a family nurse practitioner, so I'm trained in primary care. And so we started to implement that, and then we got funding from MEDF to continue that. And we're writing up the paper now. But it has, been so, meaningful, and incorporating women into our clinic is what helped expose this gap. Right. And so that's why it's so important that when you bring everyone together, you lift everybody up. We're not saying we're going to leave other people behind. And so I think that is why, incorporating women in that is so important, because we want to bring everybody together. Yeah.
That's
everyone.
awesome.
Yeah.
Joe, I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been a delight. I can't wait to see you at a conference. Maybe we can have, a cocktail at
Absolutely.
the Marriott.
Yeah.
Last question.
Sure.
Last question to send us out, because I'm not a patient, and I'm not and I'm not a clinician, but I got my start in an HTC. And so I love our HTC clinicians. They shaped me. I love them so much. And nurses are truly our North Star. From your perspective, this is such a huge, huge change of mentality when it comes to treatment in the hemophilia space. From your perspective, what is the biggest lack of understanding that patients have when they come in to shift treatment? What would be something that folks can really think about when they're thinking about their life, their lifestyle, to come in and discuss how they want to treat their hemophilia with y'all?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that goes with building a relationship with a patient, because it's so hard, and I think there's also some things that we do. We work at a teaching hospital, but we try to restrict how many people we bring into a room, at the same time, because when you're a patient and you have a room of 10 people, because you all want to see the severe hemophilia patient that's there, it's like, who wants to talk about anything? You're just, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't think I would even do that now. And I do this as a career. I would still feel intimidated if I was going to someplace, right? And so I think it's right, setting that expectation, and then just having multiple time points with that patient, so that way that they are comfortable to you. And I am very clear with patients. I'm like, listen, you are the expert with your lived experience and what you go through and what will work for you. And I'm maybe the expert in something that you may not know about this treatment. That's really, that's it. And I think if you set that tone, it just makes it, easier to build that relationship and to have these candid conversations. And besides, gene therapy, the rest of the medications, if you don't if it's not for you, we can go to something else. Right, we have options. It's not like you choose this and this is forever, except for the gene therapy.
No, I haven't heard anybody say that recently, as of late. To me, that is a phenomenal reminder. Yes, right? 100%.
You can change it.
Yeah.
To find what works best for you,
Joe. 100%. Thank you so much for doing this. We are so lucky. I speak for you and all of your colleagues. We are so lucky in this community to have y'all as, to have you all as our North Star, and to really have you guys on our medical team. We're so lucky. And to all of the hemophilia nurses out there across the country, you guys are lifesavers, and you're part of all of our families, and we just thank you guys.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be involved in a patient's healthcare journey. It really is.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks again to Joe and to our I'm Fine segment guests for joining the program today. Thanks as always to our presenting sponsor, Takeda, bleedingdisorders.com for more, and to Sanofi for their support of I'm Fine, rareblood-disorders.com for more there. We could not produce this show without our sponsors' support, and we are grateful for it. All right, Amy, next episode comes out June 26th. What can the listeners expect to hear?
Guess what? We have Barb and Jeff back.
Yes! Barb and Jeff
interview Dr. Gary McLean, and I hear it's just a humdinger.
Well, you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure to subscribe to the BloodStream podcast wherever you listen to have the next episode delivered to you the moment it goes live.
And loyal listeners, as always, email us at mailbag@bloodstreammmedia.com to inquire about our casting opportunities. Also, to hear some stuff that you would like to hear on the show.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Well, to tell us some stuff you'd like to hear on the show.
Great. When it came out, I felt it was wrong.
Yeah.
But you know what's crazy? We had 2 inquiries this week about people that were like, hey, you should talk about this on the show.
Well, that sounds like something that we need to talk about.
You guys listen to this part, which Patrick and I always kind of have thought that you don't listen to it.
Yeah, but when you send us stuff, we know you're listening. And
100%.
So mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com. I am your host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I'm your other host, Amy Board.
And until next time, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.